Oh, peace, peace, peace. This is Mizah'ni back after probably about 2 months off that have been really challenging and rough. Um, and I really wasn't even expecting to come on here today, but this is an opportunity for me to be very naked, for me to be very transparent, and share my personal experience because I'm sure there's someone out there or others out there that might be able to relate to this experience. And having the experience of being able to learn how to transmute energy, how to take a very challenging situation and get the most out of it, how to be mindful of our words and how our words have power, and how the power of our words bring things into reality, especially with us being women, divine creators. Our words have the power to give birth to new things in our lives or to bring death to things in our lives. And so I think that is something to be very mindful of as I share my personal experience. That has been a hell of a ride. It has been amazing. It has been challenging. It has been painful. It has been beautiful. It has been messy. But in all of it, it is an opportunity for me to see myself a little more clearly, which I'm grateful for. So today I wanted to share an experience, and I guess I can't say like it's a singular experience, but through doing some shadow work and some meditation, and some ritual work, I've come to notice that there have been times in my life where I have manifested or I have initiated certain processes unknowingly. And there have also been times where I have looked at myself as a victim or being victimized when, again, it was me that initiated a whole process. And what I mean by that is I'm thinking about in the sense of relationships. So doing some shadow work recently, it brought up some truths about myself centered around relationships, right? So I'm an Aries, I'm a fire sign. Fire tends to, fire signs or Aries at least tend to be very impulsive. We can be very decisive. We can make a decision. Nope, I know I want that right now. This is it, without giving the energy time to develop, without giving ourselves time to develop, to really think about things long term, right? So this particular habit, right, it can impact our relationships. And when I say relationships, I mean intimate relationships, relationships with our partners, our spouses. And what came to mind or what came into my awareness is that there have been times throughout my life where I arrived at a conclusion about my relationship with a person or about my experience with the person before they got there. So I arrived at love before this person arrived at love. I arrived at like before this person arrived at like. I knew what I wanted before that person knew what they wanted. And how pain and how woundedness and how the ego and how past trauma and how past experiences can really impact how we view that situation and how we see ourselves sometimes as victims in those types of situations where we show up and we're ready to put in the work. We show up, we're ready to give, we show up, we're ready to love, and we're ready to pour out, and we're ready to do all the things in our mind that we believe we're supposed to do, or we're ready to do our part. And then we're looking at this other person, and this other person, because they're not showing up right the way we're showing up and the way we expect them to show up. So it appears that they're disinterested. It appears that they're selfish. It appears that you're not valued, that you're not a priority. it appears that this person is just in it for themselves. And so as time progressed in some of my situations, as I'm again reflecting on them, you know, my fire that I began with, it started to burn out. So now when the person, right, comes to their realization, oh my gosh, I'm in love. Oh my gosh, this is, you know, I don't want to be without this person. Oh my gosh, this person means the world to me. Or, you know, you insert whatever, you know, words or, you know, whatever experiences you had. By the time that person, because they're a totally different person with a totally different makeup, maybe a totally different element, maybe they move slow as a damn snail, right? By the time they have reached their conclusion or their idea or their agreement within themselves, I'm about burnt out, I'm about tired, not realizing that it's my responsibility to show up as me and honor how other people show up as them. And that eliminates a lot of those feelings of being taken advantage of, being used, being victimized, not being appreciated, you know, not being valued. It can alleviate a lot of those feelings because we realize that this is only, had I realized during those times that this is where I am. And where I am does not necessarily dictate where we are. Right? Or sometimes, you know, or how about, you know, situations where, you know, you may have put pressure. I know I did when I was going into, you know, my marriage years back. You know, you put pressure on a person. I want this to happen by this date. You know, I want to be married by this date. I want to have children by this date. I want to own a house by this date. And there's nothing wrong with setting goals, and there's nothing wrong with having a plan. But when we begin to project our desire, or when we begin to project our idea, our thought, our belief, you know, when we begin to project those things onto others and expect that they're going to be able to receive it the same way that we received it, that they're going to be able to integrate the same way that we integrated into that idea or that belief or that process, that they're going to have the same feeling for it that we have, whether it's excitement, joy, you know, whatever it is, you know, it's unrealistic because we're all individuals, right? We're all individuals on our own path. And one of the things that I realized that over time, and I'm still working through the shadow work to figure out where this slipped out of my hand, is that in life, we're just people, you know, showing up, meeting one another to walk down this road together, right? We're not holding hands and where I go, you go, and where you go, I go, and we're Siamese twins and we're inseparable. We need to have the freedom, we need to have the courage to be able to go where we need to go and know that there's no love lost because we went and we did what we needed to do for ourselves. But oftentimes because, you know, a lot of our histories, right, are rooted in abandonment on some level, or rooted in neglect or rejection on some level, whether it was in your family, whether it was in your friendship circle, whether it was in school, whether it was in work. In some area, we feel inadequate, or we feel less than if we don't have, you know, a person to attach ourselves to along this path. I want this person to do it with me. I don't want to do it by myself. I don't want to stand out. And that can cause us having those feelings of wanting to do this certain way, you know, can cause us to put pressure on other people who are just trying to live their free life too. So now we're trying to live a free life, but we're trying to attach ourselves to someone while we're living our free life, and we want to drag them along. We want them to be bound to us and to be our support system and our support network and the person that holds us up and holds us down while we go off, right? We want them to be our anchor. We want them to be our foundation and our security, right? And provide that security for us while we go explore, while we're living the life that we want to live. And meanwhile, because we're projecting this expectation onto them, now it's disrupting their freedom. Now it's disrupting their experience. I needed to say this, and I'm grateful. I needed to be able to say this out loud. I needed to be able to hear myself say this, because this is a part of my personal healing. So now we're projecting that onto the other person, and sometimes the other person is doing the same. So we end up in a codependent relationship when we can look and see that we have a fear of being without a person for a particular reason, and that person is our security, and that person is our anchor. You know, that's a very dangerous place to be in, because what happens, I heard a sister say this the other day, and I wish I remember who it was. I can't remember who it was. A sister, I believe it was on Instagram, but it might have been Ajna, but I'm not sure. You know, and so that's a very sticky place to be in, because what happens when that person, because they are who they are, right? They're not who we want them to be. They are who they are. What happens when that person cannot live up to that expectation? What happens when that person cannot meet that standard? What happens when the load that we're trying to put off on this person and these expectations are too much for them to carry their shit and your shit at the same time? And now they become the reason why we can't. I can't do this because and because they won't, and they're not giving me what I need, and they're not giving me the time I need, and they're not giving me the love I need, and they're not giving me the attention I need, and they're not taking me out like I want them to take me out, and they're not buying things for me like I like to be bought, you know, and they're not. Everything is just they're not. And we forget that we got a whole life to live. Like, whether they doing whatever they doing or not, like, yo, so you letting me, I'll speak to me. So you're letting this one thing, this one piece, stop you from living your whole damn life? Now you want to go in and you want to sit in a corner. You want to sit in the dark. You want to put the covers over your head because shit ain't going right in this one area. You got a whole damn life to live. But that's a sign that sometimes we are so focused on the outside and we pour so much on the outside that we forget that we need to create a foundation for ourselves. And this is not about being an independent woman who don't need no man, who don't need nobody, who don't need nothing because she do everything for herself and she got everything and everybody could just get out her face because she don't need nobody. No, not that. This is knowing that self is the foundation, the relationship and the knowledge of self and the love for self and the value of self and the concern for self and the protection of self and the provision of self, you know, is the foundation of our lives. Everything else that's added to that, we give thanks. It's a bonus. It's a plus. It's even more fertilizer and nutrients for us to grow, you know, happy and healthy and even stronger. It's just extra. But our seed needs to be planted in us. Our seed don't need to be planted in somebody else. My seed of growth needs to be planted in me so that what sprouts out of that is reflective of who and what I am authentically. And not only that, but I am continuously nourishing myself so that if somebody don't water me, I still get water. If somebody don't feed me, I still get fed. If somebody doesn't nurture me, I'm still being nurtured. This is the truth. This is the beauty of life. And so here right now in this moment, I am forced to confront some things that I didn't even see or didn't have the realization. I'm grateful for life happening so that I could see a little more clearly. A lot of times we run from life happening, right? A lot of times we try to calculate and we try to strategize around the hurdles, but sometimes you need to trip over that hurdle. Sometimes you need to fall, because it's in the falling and it's in the pain that you learn. But if you're always trying to strategize and you're always trying to get around it, you're always trying to maneuver around the pain, and you're always trying to get over and around, and you're trying to avoid it, you don't learn your lesson. It just builds and you continue to perpetuate that thing. And then it blows up in your life and it blows up in your face. I used to have a meet the bull head on attitude. And for whatever reason, I do know the reason. I'm not going to say whatever reason. To keep it 100, truth be told, because I was so busy pouring out instead of pouring in, I no longer had the strength and the fortitude. I no longer had the perseverance. I lost a lot of my will and I lost a lot of my drive because I was pouring it out into others. I was not eating twice as much as I was feeding. So when it came time for me to do what I needed to do for me, even with some of the self-love work, some of the self-care work, it wasn't enough because I was putting out more than I was pouring in. And I ended up becoming depleted. And then when you're depleted and you don't have what you need, then you become bitter, right? Because then you can think about all the people you gave it to. You can think about the 10,000 people that you poured yourself out to, and maybe the one or two who poured back into you, and it still wasn't enough. And sometimes we end up draining those people who pour back into us. And they like, hey, I'm just trying to give you this little bit extra. Like, I ain't really got it. I'm trying to save some for myself. Those are boundaries, healthy boundaries. Those are healthy boundaries. And boundaries are nothing without follow through. I had a lot of boundaries. Boundaries are nothing without follow through. What are boundaries without follow through? Just words that people don't take seriously. And they shouldn't, right? You can't even take yourself seriously. If I step over my own boundary to betray myself or to do whatever, why should anybody else take my boundaries? Why should anybody else take my boundaries for myself seriously? If I'm always crossing over my own boundary, or if others are crossing my boundary and there's no consequence, there's no follow through on my side, well, I'm just talking. So, overall, I just wanted to share my experience with becoming aware of the role that I play in my own pain, the role that I play in my own suffering, the role that I play in my own woundedness, the role that I play in my own frustration through expectation. And see, I'll do another video on expectation versus agreements, right? Because there's a difference between expectation, right, which is a single-sided thing, like this is what I expect, versus agreements, And I'm grateful to be in this position right now because I'm learning and I'm reflecting. All of my Aquarius, all of my air energy is moving right now, and I'm grateful. And it's making me a little anxious because I just have to sit and listen. I'm used to moving and grooving and having other things interrupted, and there's no interruption right now. There's just truth. And boy, that shit can be heavy. Damn near blow you over. Take your breath away. Make you feel like you want to go somewhere and hide. Make you feel exposed. Especially when you see it so clearly. But I'm giving thanks today for it. I'm giving thanks for the eye to see it that I didn't have before. I'm giving thanks for the time to slow down and listen that I didn't have before. I'm giving thanks for the awareness to be the observer that I didn't necessarily have before. Looking at it as a gift, no matter how challenging it is. Knowing that by the simple fact that I'm processing it, the simple fact that I'm filtering through it and reclaiming the pieces that are for me, it makes me feel empowered. Even in a moment where, not much is in my control. There is a lot that's in my control, but it doesn't feel like there's much in my control. So just coming to awareness and not even judging it as bad or good or this is right or wrong. Just observing it. Just being watchful over it. Paying attention to it. Just honoring it. And not spending a whole lot of time in it and wallowing in it. But wanting to get enough of the awareness. Wanting to feel it enough to where it imprints into my mind so that I can consciously make an effort and a decision to change, to transmute, to transform. So I'm grateful for this opportunity, which I feel is bittersweet. But I give thanks for the polarity. I give thanks for the integration. I give thanks for the harmony that the bitter and the sweet can blend and reside together, and the bitter and the sweet can be together. It doesn't just have to be one. That's what makes life so beautiful, the bitter and the sweet. That's what makes life, the bitter and the sweet. Because life is not going to be all sweet, and life is not going to be all bitter. So I'm giving thanks for the opportunity to be able to continue to master the integration and honoring things and people for who and what they are, and being mindful of my dependencies and my projections, and being mindful of my fears and my expectations. Because there's just one thing that I really want. And I'm glad that I was reminded of that. And that reminder helps to center me a little better. It gives me, see, that reminder becomes my new anchor. My truth becomes my new anchor, right? Instead of me being anchored in someone else, and, now my truth and what I want, my will for my life becomes my anchor. My passion and my purpose becomes my anchor. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. So I just wanted to drop that off. I will that you all have an amazing day. Be well. Like I said, it's been a while, and I'm just, I know we're up on a new moon. Haven't done my rituals yet. I'm going to be working on my rituals tonight. But I think that I just had to get some clarity before I started my rituals so that I could be very intentional and purposeful about what it is that I'm calling into this new season. What am I manifesting? And being sure that I'm manifesting it with pureness, and I'm manifesting it with passion, and I'm manifesting it with truth. What I truly know to be for me. Not what the world is saying, manifest this and manifest that and work on it. No, what I know internally, I need to solidify within my being. So again, I will that you all have an amazing, amazing afternoon, evening, day,